Holy shit. He said what?
Truly, I want to like something about her. I'm searching for something to like about her. And it's so hard because she suffers from such a rare disorder of being unable to just be a human. I used to not like Meghan Markle, but now I'm a fan. I don't know. I think she's funny.
Oh, pull it up, Jamie.
Would you ever run for office?
No.
Never.
No.
Never.
Never. Oh my gosh, I work so hard and I appreciate what hard work looks like. I like working hard.
Meghan Markle finds herself once again caught in a wave of emotional headlines, but this time the energy around it feels noticeably heavier and more intense than anything before it. This isn't the usual royal commentary or recycled palace drama. It feels sharper, more public, and far more exposing in the way every detail is being picked apart in real time. The spotlight isn't soft anymore, it's unforgiving, and it's shining directly into every layer of her public image with zero hesitation. Right at the center of this unfolding storm is Candace Owens stepping forward with a microphone, strong opinions, and a completely unfiltered approach that leaves no room for interpretation or hesitation. She is openly criticizing Meghan, with claims from commentators suggesting that Meghan has turned personal struggles into a highly profitable media identity. The accusation alone is enough to ignite conversations everywhere.
I can't take it anymore. Get out, get out, get out. Uncle, make it end. Make it end.
Slay the dragon, save the princess.
Yeah, I loved it.
Hey, just sending love and checking in.
Look at that face. She's not happy.
Oh, yeah, it's so hard to be pretty. So your life is so hard. You're a fucking princess.
There are times we get together and I'm like, I just want to have DoorDash come in. And you're like, let's make some. And I'm like,
No, I don't want to cook again, Meghan. My God, take a break.
And the internet reacts instantly with waves of commentary, jokes, debates, and viral posts exploding across every platform at once. This is the kind of moment where social media doesn't slow down. It accelerates. Every corner of the internet jumps in, from serious breakdowns to sarcastic reactions, and even fake viral tweets that capture how fast public opinion can shift in situations like this. The entire conversation becomes a digital storm where everyone has something to say, whether informed or purely reactive. Every interview, every emotional sit-down, every carefully staged podcast appearance, and every glossy high-production streaming project has now been pulled into a wider discussion that refuses to die down. Critics argue that when you look at all of these appearances together, they start to form a pattern that feels less like spontaneous storytelling and more like a carefully constructed media narrative. Nothing appears accidental anymore in the way it is framed or delivered. Meghan Markle is often presented as bold, modern, and unapologetically authentic, a woman who challenged an institution and carved out her own identity. But when the cinematic filters are removed, when the emotional music fades, and when the carefully controlled visuals are stripped away, what remains is being heavily debated online and in commentary spaces everywhere. Some argue it no longer looks like a fairy tale, but instead resembles a highly structured public relations strategy.
Never once played a victim, but she is going to cry and you will like her and you will see her as a victim, no matter how many dollars it takes. If it takes $88 million for you to believe that she is victimized by being a princess, and by golly, by the end of it, one of the executives came out and said they quite literally have no talent, but worse than that, they don't want to work. Never, ever.
Oh my gosh, I work so hard and I appreciate what hard work looks like. I like working hard.
She's not editing scripts. She's not editing what's going to happen the next day. People are putting that in place. She won't even organise her own clothes. Everything is organised for her. That is not hard work. Hard work is get up in the morning, get to 7 o'clock, get into a factory or a shop and working for 10 hours on your feet, coming home knackered. That's not what happens to her.
Built around personal storytelling. Instead of pure organic expression, critics say what the world is seeing is a layered branding system where lived experiences are repeatedly reshaped into content designed for global consumption. Every story is edited, repackaged, and reintroduced in new formats across different platforms. And as this cycle continues, audiences start noticing repetition in tone, structure, and emotional delivery that begins to feel familiar rather than fresh. Public sympathy, which once felt strong and consistent, is now described by some observers as becoming more selective and fragmented over time. Online audiences move quickly, and attention spans shift even faster, meaning emotional narratives don't always land the way they used to. The hard reality being discussed is that emotional positioning alone doesn't guarantee long-term engagement anymore. In this environment, Meghan's personal brand is often said by critics to be approaching or possibly already past its peak visibility phase. Major deals and partnerships that once generated massive attention are now being re-examined.
They want their privacy, but I don't know. They just are constantly on a podcast, in an interview with Oprah. I mean, this has been the most bizarre pursuit of privacy that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Oh my God, that hat. Oh God, he's so hot. Look at him. Isn't Prince Harry? She bagged a fox. But look how nice is she pulling away from her lovely prince. It's so good. Who's filming this?
Oh, pull it up, Jamie.
Through a more skeptical lens. The Spotify partnership, in particular, is frequently brought up as an example of high expectations meeting disappointing output in the eyes of some commentators. The original expectation was to build a powerful content empire filled with engaging storytelling, deep conversations, and consistent creative output. But what actually emerged, according to critics, was far more limited than what was initially promised or imagined. A single podcast project became the focal point, and it quickly became a subject of debate regarding tone, structure, and overall impact. Instead of being seen as groundbreaking or revolutionary, some viewers described it as overly polished, but lacking substance. Others said it felt like something carefully produced to sound meaningful without delivering the depth people were expecting. The reaction online was mixed, but the critical voices were loud enough to shape the broader narrative. Even within industry commentary, stronger opinions surfaced that intensified the discussion further. A senior figure from Spotify reportedly referred to the situation using extremely blunt language, calling them grifters, a label that instantly spread across social media and triggered widespread controversy and debate.
The world's biggest victims right now are the Duke and Duchess of Netflix.
But truth be told, no matter how hard I tried, no matter how good I was, no matter what I did, they were still going to find a way to destroy me.
Yeah, nobody set out to destroy you. You destroyed yourselves in this country with your ludicrous, hypocritical behaviour. The truth be told, what you just did is complete and utter garbage.
I somehow stumbled across a Netflix commercial for the Meghan Markle show. The American actress who became a duchess, who tried to destroy the royal family, which then booted them out of England. How bad that trailer, that seems like the worst show that I've ever heard of.
Whether people agreed or disagreed, the phrase itself became part of the larger public conversation. Candace Owens also amplified the criticism, stating in her commentary that the entire setup looked like a form of branding wrapped in empowerment language. Her remarks added more fuel to an already heated discussion, especially among audiences already questioning the structure and consistency of the media projects being released. From there, attention shifted heavily toward Netflix and the Sussex content partnership, which had been promoted with massive expectations. The Harry and Meghan docuseries was introduced as something explosive and deeply revealing, promising unseen perspectives and emotional honesty at a global scale. However, when audiences actually engaged with the series, reactions varied widely. Some viewers pointed out that instead of shocking revelations, they saw slow-paced storytelling, carefully curated visuals, and emotionally charged scenes that felt highly edited for tone rather than raw authenticity. Even everyday moments were presented with cinematic framing that made them feel stylized rather than spontaneous. Then came With Love Meghan, a lifestyle-oriented project that quickly became another focal point of online criticism. Some described it as lacking depth, while others said it leaned too heavily on aesthetics rather than meaningful content. The tone of the show sparked comparisons to social media lifestyle pages rather than traditional documentary storytelling. Audience reactions reflected this divide. with many saying it felt repetitive or difficult to stay engaged with. The data reportedly showed declining interest, which fueled further debate about whether the audience was losing patience or simply moving on to different content entirely. At the center of all this discussion is a growing question circulating online: whether this content is truly documentary storytelling or something closer to a carefully packaged media pitch designed for global consumption, and when authenticity is presented in a highly polished, branded format, audiences naturally begin to question what is real and what is performance. Just as the conversation around the rebrand seemed to settle, a new development entered the spotlight: American Riviera Orchard. This new lifestyle venture immediately became a talking point across social platforms, drawing attention not only for what it offered, but also for how it was introduced. Instead of launching with a clearly defined product ecosystem or detailed brand identity, the rollout began with something unexpectedly simple: jars of jam. That detail alone became a viral discussion point, sparking humor, confusion, and criticism across multiple online communities. The branding direction was intended to feel artisanal, warm, and rooted in California-inspired lifestyle aesthetics. However, many people interpreted it differently, suggesting it felt disconnected from the economic realities many households are currently experiencing. While some families are managing rising costs and financial pressure, luxury-positioned lifestyle products sparked immediate debate. During a time when economic uncertainty continues to affect everyday decisions, even small lifestyle branding choices can become amplified in public conversation. What may have been intended as a creative brand launch instead turned into a broader discussion about timing, tone, and cultural awareness. Critics further argued that launching a high-end lifestyle identity in such a climate created a perception gap between branding intention and public reception. Instead of excitement, it triggered questions about relevance and relatability in a very specific moment in time. Some commentary even suggested that the project leaned heavily on aesthetic identity rather than functional clarity. The visuals, packaging, and presentation became the focal point rather than the actual product direction or long-term strategy. At the heart of this entire ongoing conversation remains a recurring idea repeatedly mentioned in commentary circles: that the royal connection continues to function as a powerful global branding asset. According to this perspective, it operates almost like a symbolic passport to attention, influence, and continuous media relevance, shaping how every new project is received and interpreted in the public space. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are once again at the center of a storm of commentary that refuses to calm down. And this time, the narrative being pushed online feels even more intense, layered, and emotionally charged than before. Critics are framing the entire situation as a cycle of branding, media appearances, and public perception battles that keep repeating in different forms, with every new project reigniting the same debate all over again. At the heart of the criticism is a harsh and direct claim being repeated across commentary spaces that Meghan and Harry continue to lean on royal titles in public perception as if they still function like a form of currency in the modern media world. Some commentators describe it in blunt terms, saying it's like swiping expired credit cards, a metaphor used to suggest that the symbolic power of the crown may not carry the same weight outside palace walls as it once did. This framing quickly leads into a larger discussion about what actually drives success in today's global media environment. Many voices argue that outside of royal institutions, influence is no longer guaranteed by titles, connections, or origin stories alone. Instead, they say it requires consistent ideas, strong execution, audience understanding, and long-term follow-through that connects with people in a meaningful way. And that's where the criticism begins to intensify. Harry's role in the public narrative is often described in a very specific way by critics and online commentators. Some portray him as someone who stepped out of a highly structured system without a clear roadmap for what comes next. His public appearances, interviews, and memoir discussions are frequently analysed and dissected, with observers focusing on his tone, expressions, and sometimes awkward delivery in high-pressure media environments. In certain commentary spaces, he is described in a less flattering way, almost like someone trying to adjust to a completely different world after leaving behind an institution that shaped every part of his identity. His memoir and media appearances are often brought up as examples of how his voice is being used to tell personal stories, but critics debate whether the presentation feels fully aligned with a strong public persona or still in transition. Some even exaggerate the imagery for effect, saying he sometimes appears like someone navigating modern media spaces with uncertainty, as if he is still learning how to operate in environments like interviews, global press coverage, and promotional campaigns. Meanwhile, Meghan is framed very differently in the same discussions. Critics consistently acknowledge her ambition, describing it as strong, visible, and persistent across every phase of her public journey. But they also argue that somewhere along the way, between lifestyle branding, media productions, and high-visibility projects, there is a perceived disconnect between intention and execution. From product-style ventures like lifestyle branding ideas to high-production streaming deals involving cinematic visuals, some observers say the focus often leans heavily toward presentation and aesthetic identity rather than substance-driven storytelling. This is where one of the central criticisms emerges. According to Commentary Voices, you cannot successfully build a long-term identity as a royal rebel while still relying on the very royal association that the narrative claims to move away from. This contradiction becomes a repeated talking point, especially in discussions about branding strategy and public perception. Some argue that the Sussex brand operates under the assumption that stepping away from royal duties would automatically lead to global admiration, freedom, and sustained influence at the same level as before. But critics say the reality of media attention is far more competitive and unpredictable, where public interest constantly shifts and loyalty is never guaranteed. And this is where a major narrative shift begins in the discussion. Many commentators say Meghan didn't just marry into a royal family, she also entered a global platform that instantly transformed her visibility. Before this moment, her career existed in a much smaller entertainment space, primarily within mid-tier television roles and limited mainstream recognition. But after her relationship with Harry became global news, her visibility changed overnight in a way few public figures ever experience. Suddenly, she was no longer just an actress working toward recognition, she became a worldwide headline. And critics argue that this shift was not driven by a single performance role or activism campaign, but rather by proximity to royalty itself. This idea becomes central in online debates. The argument is that the product being consumed by global audiences is not just individual content, but the combined identity of Meghan, Harry, and the Sussex brand as a whole. In this framing, Meghan becomes the primary face of the brand identity, while Harry is often described as playing a supporting or secondary role within the broader narrative structure. Some commentary even goes further, suggesting that in many public-facing moments, Harry appears more like a background presence than a driving force behind media direction. Every major rollout, whether it's Netflix content, podcast discussions, interviews, or public statements, gets analysed through this lens of who is leading and who is supporting. And according to critics, Meghan is consistently positioned at the centre of these media cycles. She is often described as the one shaping messaging, defining tone, and steering narrative direction, while Harry is seen as participating but not necessarily leading the strategic public identity. This dynamic has become one of the most discussed aspects of their public image. Some commentators frame it as a partnership where roles are clearly defined in practice, even if not officially stated, with Meghan taking the more visible branding position and Harry acting as a consistent but quieter presence. But beyond role dynamics, another recurring criticism focuses on expectations versus public reception. Critics argue that there is a belief within the Sussex branding strategy that titles, identity, and royal association would automatically sustain global influence indefinitely. However, public attention doesn't always work that way, especially in an environment where audiences are constantly exposed to new content, personalities, and narratives every day. This leads to a growing gap between intention and perception. And into this already heated conversation, Candace Owens enters again as a major critical voice. She is often described in commentary as highly direct, sharp, and unapologetic in tone, using strong language and sarcastic delivery to challenge Meghan's public image and branding choices. Her criticism is not subtle. It is intentionally provocative, designed to trigger discussion, disagreement, and viral reaction. In her framing, Meghan's public identity becomes something she dissects aggressively, using humor and exaggeration to emphasize her points. Supporters of her commentary say she is simply saying out loud what others are thinking, while critics argue her tone escalates already emotional narratives into even more polarized debates. At the same time, broader industry commentary introduces another layer of controversy. A senior Spotify executive is referenced in discussions where reported comments about the Sussex partnership created widespread online debate. The word grifters enters the conversation and quickly becomes one of the most repeated and controversial labels associated with this entire narrative. Whether people agree with it or not, the term spreads rapidly across social platforms, becoming part of a much larger argument about celebrity media deals, expectations, and actual output. Critics using this framing argue that authenticity becomes difficult to sell when everything appears heavily curated, carefully approved, and filtered through professional PR systems. They say audiences today are far more sensitive to tone, presentation, and perceived sincerity than ever before. Instead of raw storytelling, some viewers describe what they receive as highly polished, emotional packaging, designed to look authentic while still maintaining complete control over narrative direction. This perception gap becomes one of the central tensions in the discussion. And because of that, the conversation naturally evolves into a bigger question that keeps resurfacing across commentary spaces. Has Meghan Markle's media strategy reached its limit, or is there still room for reinvention through new projects and future branding moves? This question gains even more weight as discussions shift toward formal institutional attention. What was once dismissed as speculation or online theory is now being discussed in more structured contexts, involving political and legislative language. Reports and commentary reference discussions tied to parliamentary environments, including mentions of structured motions and formal debate processes rather than casual online reaction. One name that appears in these discussions is Lord Simon Lee, described in commentary as a crossbench peer associated with broader conversations involving royal branding and institutional influence. According to these discussions, there is growing attention within certain political circles regarding how modern media identities intersect with historical institutions and public perception. Some view this as symbolic discussion, while others interpret it as potentially meaningful, depending on how it develops within formal legislative frameworks. As this narrative continues to evolve, audiences online remain deeply engaged, analyzing every new update, statement, and reaction as part of a much larger ongoing media storyline. And at the center of it all remains the same debate about branding, identity, influence, and public perception in the modern digital age. Because in today's world, attention moves fast, narratives shift constantly, and no media strategy remains untouched by scrutiny for long. If you've made it this far, drop a comment below and let us know what you think about this whole situation. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more breakdowns, reactions, and deep dives into stories the mainstream often won't touch. Stay tuned, because the next headline could drop at any moment.